Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is great to be here with all of you to roll out a very important new initiative and to introduce everyone to our Violence Interrupters team who are here behind me in the orange shirts. And also a big thank you to Pillsbury United Communities for hosting us here today, as well as for the partnership. And we're all here right now to welcome MinneapolUS to our team. To introduce them to you. And I think that I speak for all of us when I say that this has been a painful year in so many different respects, from a global pandemic to an economic downturn, the tragic killing of George Floyd, the subsequent unrest. And then there's also this epidemic of loneliness that we're all feeling in a very big way. And I think this year has also exposed so many of the inequities that have been pervasive throughout our city's history, but are especially exposed right now in this moment. And many of those inequities do come, in fact, in the form of public safety. And so it's been so essential that we think about transformation, think about doing things differently, and being innovative wherever we can. And in Minneapolis, like so many other metro areas around the country, we're seeing firsthand some of the consequences of these public health crises. The pandemic, as well as the gun violence we're seeing, they're stacked on top of one another, and truthfully, we all know that they do deserve a public health response. And that's at the very heart of what our director of our Office of Violence Prevention, Sasha Cotton, has been pushing for quite some time. In Minneapolis, we're experiencing really an unsettling and tragic reality of the numbers of shootings and homicides that we're seeing right now. We have around 50 shootings that have been double. In other words, there have been 2 victims that have been impacted. That's up from around 32 last year, around 400 shootings thus far this year, which is nearly double what we saw in 2019. And I tell you those numbers not to provide concern, but to say, you know what? We need to double down in every way, shape, and form. And the causes of some of the violence that we're seeing is multifaceted. And anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. The causes and the reasons for this uptick in violence has numerous different reasons, and we need to acknowledge all of them. It's the impacts of a global pandemic. It's the fact that people no longer have a job, that income is diminished. It's the fact that many of our children have to undergo distance learning right now. It's some of the mental and cognitive and emotional issues that people face when they don't have that normal, both social and physical contact. It's the truth that our neighborhoods are suffering, and it's also this epidemic of loneliness that I've mentioned already. And we need to be very dedicated and disciplined as we make progress where we can. And this MinneapolUS team right here, they are a striking example of what's possible when we work together. That's stopping, and I want to be very clear that in terms of what we're pushing for, stopping the gun violence has to be and is a #1 priority. And after implementing very similar models in both New York City and Philadelphia, communities did in fact see the rate of gun violence drop dramatically, and we know that there is promise and potential with this approach. And we know that promise and potential is needed. And so these challenges that I've discussed and the statistics that I mentioned earlier, they'll demand the best of all of us. It is going to take all of us to address violence in our city, and our 2021 budget proposal is doubling down on the funding for the Office of Violence Prevention, especially through this model of violence interrupters, and it's making those investments permanent. We're making an investment in this community. It's about all of us. We're making an investment in our trusted partners and community members. It is about all of us. We're making an investment so that we can face these challenges head on and also support some of the very important work that is already underway. We also know that gun violence is cyclical and that it has the propensity to spread when left unchecked. That is the underlying premise of MinneapolUS. We can attack this in a very direct and effective and a proven way. And this work will be concentrated in some of the areas that are at highest risk. We will be working with many of the people that are at the highest risk of being involved either involved directly in or victims of gun violence. And having this really sustained and targeted outreach in this population, we know will increase the number of people that are knowledgeable about the services that we're able to provide here at the city and lead to more support and services that are being provided, and then further reduce some of the violence interactions that we're seeing. So this is just a part of what the Office of Violence Prevention is already working on. We already have a group violence intervention initiative that has seen success. We have our next step hospital-based intervention that has seen success. And so this is doubling down on that work, finding areas of unity wherever we can, and moving forward to addressing what is an issue in our city to tackle this gun violence. And so, you know, I do want to make sure that in addition to all of the wonderful violence interrupters that are up behind me right now with these orange shirts, I also want to make sure that I call out the excellent work of our director of all of this, Sasha Cotton. One of my favorite parts of being mayor in Minneapolis is that you get to work with people that have these unique aspects of expertise. And Director Cotton most definitely does. So this is a big step. We are united in purpose and strategy in getting this done. And I'm proud also to introduce our City Council President, Bender, in just a second. But before I do, a couple people that I also want to acknowledge. Muhammad, who is part of our South Side team right now, is going to be leading a lot of that work from the South Side. And I don't know if Jamil is here as well. Jamil's not here, but he'll be leading a lot of the work on the north side in conjunction with these people, some of these wonderful leaders behind me. And so next up, a partner in a lot of this work, and I know she's committed to it as well, our City Council President, Lisa Bender.
Thank you, Mayor. Get used to this. Hi, I'm Lisa Bender. I'm the President of the Minneapolis City Council. I'm honored to be here in Ward 5 with its amazing City Council Representative Jeremiah Ellison and his partner from the North Side, Councilmember Philippe Cunningham, who you'll hear from in a second. And I'm here because the City Council stands behind our colleagues who are working so hard, block by block, neighbor by neighbor, to address the gun violence that is plaguing our community, and especially our young people. And we are united in saying that this violence, especially the violence hurting our young people, must end. And it's going to take all of us. You know, I see some kids playing in the yard over there. Those kids need to live in a neighborhood that is as safe as any of our children in any corner of Minneapolis. And it will take all of us committed to that goal. For 25 years in Minneapolis, gun violence has been concentrated in only 18 city blocks. That's a solvable problem. And if we put the right resources to that problem, we can eliminate the gun violence that is killing our children, our community's children. So I'm really, again, honored to be here to support my colleagues in their leadership. In 2018, in the budget amendment, the City Council created the Office of Violence Prevention because we saw a gap in how our city was addressing the issue of violence. We saw a gap in programs that were spread out throughout the enterprise in a way to build on the successes of folks in our community that were leading the fight against violence. So we created the Office of Violence Prevention. Director Sasha Cotton is an amazing leader, and she is working hand in hand with the folks in our community who have the solutions, who are there fighting every single day, and who need us to have their back, to give them the resources that they need to be successful. So I'm proud to introduce my colleague, Councilmember Philippe Cunningham, the chair of our Public Safety Committee, Public Health and Public Safety Committee. And he will tell you a little bit more about the Office of Violence Prevention and the MinneapolUS Violence Interrupters. Councilmember Cunningham.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Philippe Cunningham, and I am the Minneapolis City Council member representing the 4th Ward here in North Minneapolis. I am also the chair of the City Council's Public Health and Safety Committee. As has already been mentioned, but it's worth stating yet again, that building a safer city is going to take all of us. Each of us brings our own set of skills, attributes, networks of people that when you bring all of those together, that is what actually contributes to the efforts. As Council President Bender mentioned, in 2018, I helped to bring forward an amendment as well as an ordinance that created the Office of Violence Prevention. The reason why I did that and why I stand so firmly in support of all the work that the Office of Violence Prevention does is because that is the public health approach to public safety. It is the comprehensive approach. That is concretely how we do this work in a way that layers the interventions and the strategies to be able to get to the root of causes of violence. We know that violence operates in a cycle, and that public health officials who focus epidemiology have found that it spreads like an infectious disease. And like an infectious disease, it can be treated, it can be prevented, and it can be cured. What we are facing here in Minneapolis is something that we can get to the root of, but it will take absolutely all of us. Our city is blessed to have the MinneapolUS Violence Interrupters as a part of our movement. Being able to do the work that they do requires a rare kind of respect and an incredibly rare skill of influence. They can influence those who are caught up in that cycle of violence to put the guns down and make different choices. I just have to say, as a council member myself, it is powerful to see how the community here on the north side responds when they see violence interrupters out. They clap, they shout thank you. They know that we are all in this together. I'm proud, as the city council member who championed this strategy, that this strategy be brought to Minneapolis, to see it come to fruition. We are concretely approaching this work again at multiple layers. And I also am proud to be able to see in real time how blessed we are to have these powerhouses working alongside us in this work. Is this the single strategy that is going to solve all the crime and violence issues that we are facing in our city? Of course not. It's going to take multiple strategies. There is no one strategy that will do to do that. And decades of research shows that. Again, we have to be braiding together multiple strategies that are in complement with one another to be able to truly disrupt those cycles. The violence interrupters are an important piece of the larger puzzle we have to put together as a city that will add up to safety in our city. But this piece isn't just important, it is critical to the success of our movement towards a safer Minneapolis. I want to make sure to give a special thank you to Director Sasha Cotton for her diligent leadership in making this strategy happen so quickly, which is unheard of in government. And to each and every one of the interrupters, thank you for saying yes to joining us alongside this work to make this a safer city. Thank you, each and every one of you. Collectively, we will learn together and we will build power together. A safer Minneapolis is possible, but only if we do this work together. Thank you. I'm not sure. Oh, and next up is our Commissioner of our Department of Health, Gretchen Musicant. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Let me put on my glasses and take off my mask. The Office of Violence, I'm going to give you a little bit of a historical connection to where we began to look at violence as a public health issue here in Minneapolis. So the Office of Violence Prevention represents an evolution in the city's approach to violence that began formally in 2006 when the City Council declared youth violence as a public health issue. From that action came the development and adoption, again by the City Council, of a blueprint for action to prevent youth violence in 2008. The blueprint gave us the framework that continues to guide our work today. With this foundation, we have worked with the U.S. Office of Justice to connect with resources and other communities across the country using similar approaches. Our connections with national resources and expertise has also included work with the Prevention Institute in Oakland, Cities United and John Jay College, and many others. Since 2006, we have been building our knowledge, our relationships, our resources, and our programs. As has been stated, the Office of Violence Prevention was created in December of 2018 to build on and expand this work. It was fully staffed and launched in 2019. Now, to talk about all the work that has happened over that history, somewhat, not all of it, and since the office was created, I welcome Director Sasha Cotton.
Good afternoon. I knew it was going to happen. I almost fell. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Sasha Cotton, the director of the Minneapolis Office of Violence Prevention. And before I get into my remarks, I do want to just say thank you to everyone who is here, including our friends in the press, but also really more importantly to our community members who stand side by side with me. I would never say behind me. As a leader, I really believe that it is important that we lift up the voice and the experiences of the people in community, because it really, as it has been said already, will take all of us. And yes, there are a great set of expertise that stand with me in this work, but I also compel each and every one of you who are listening to think about the ways in which you can step into filling a role in getting to community violence and addressing it. Excuse me, I'm passionate. But we have to figure out the solutions, and they really do live in community. We have all of the evidence and all of the science, and we are really working hard to integrate that into the city of Minneapolis and into the Office of Violence Prevention. But without what will work here in Minneapolis, it just won't work. And so please reach out to us, let us know your ideas, your strategies. You may have the next big idea that we can implement and strategize to put into place to keep our city safe. So think about that. Secondly, I'd like to thank our elected officials, our mayor, our council president, Councilmember Philippe Cunningham, Councilmember Cam Gordon, and Councilmember Ellison, whose ward we're in, for their ongoing support, along with the entire council. We've been really blessed and fortunate to have a lot of support. From the council, from the mayor's office, to getting this work up and running, but also thinking about it long term, because this is not a one-off. I really believe that our city is invested in getting these strategies right, in looking at the science and the evidence that has worked in other places, and to be quite frank, what hasn't worked. We know that there are strategies that have been lifted up, both here and in other places, that haven't worked, and we want to make sure that we do everything that we can to test theories and get it right, and adapt and modify when we aren't. And so to that point, I want to talk a little bit about some of the projects that we have had that we are seeing some really good success with. To get us started, I want to give credit to this place that we're in right now, Oak Park Heights, which is a Pillsbury program, Pillsbury United. I want to say thank you to Adair Mosley, who's the director of Pillsbury, and I also want to thank Antonio Cardona. I want to make sure I get his name right. It's a tricky one, but this is one of their sites, and we are really proud to be a partner with the Minneapolis Bench Project and Art is My Weapon, who's led by Nikki McComb, who's here. The benches that you see in the garden are benches of honor, and they are a project that was developed through the Office of Violence Prevention Fund over a 2-year period. So in 2019, these benches were developed by young people being led by Nikki, who is an artist. They're all made from decommissioned gun parts, which is really important to note, because from the ashes can rise great things. And that's really the symbolic value of these benches, that they have inspired young people, that they have brought out artistic value in our young people, which we know is so important to their development and them avoiding violence. But they've come from a place that we've historically thought of as negative. Guns are something that cause harm in our community. And like I said, from great despair, we can find great inspiration and great beauty. And I think we are in a pivotal moment like that in our city. We're experiencing some real challenges, but I believe that from it, we can find some solutions that are going to lead to greatness here in Minneapolis and hopefully beyond. So thank you to Nikki for helping to organize the space. And I also want to acknowledge that the locks you see on the benches as well as on the fence symbolize lost lives to gun violence. You're able to come and place a lock on any of these benches or on the fence to commemorate the lives of of people you've lost to gun violence. This is a healing and cathartic space for people to come and think about those experiences, think about those people, and remember the value add that they've had in your lives and how quickly they have been taken from us by guns, and how those guns can ultimately do a lot of damage, but also we can find healing and coming together and working together to prevent the next issue of violence. That being said, there are a few programs that the Office of Violence Prevention has that focus specifically on the victims of gun violence, and I want to talk for just a few minutes about those programs, in addition to highlighting some of the work of our violence interrupters. The Group Violence Intervention has existed in Minneapolis since the middle of 2017. It is designed and modeled after the Group Violence Intervention, which was developed at John Jay College. Our Commissioner of Health, who I'm also very grateful for, lifted up some of the partnerships that we have, and that is one of our critical partners. They really help us to evaluate the data of how group dynamics are playing out in our city and to come up with strategies that help to keep people safe, alive, and free. Because when those things are on the table, anything is possible. And that's what we want for our communities. We want people to be safe, we want them to be alive, and whenever possible, we want them to be free from incarceration in jail, if that's possible and safe for the community. So that work is ongoing and continues to be very important. In 2020, we've seen significant spikes in requests for services. We are currently serving over 100 people and families in that model. And that work continues to be challenged by COVID, but we are finding ways to strategize around that and provide the resources and services to people that they need in order to get their lives on a trajectory away from violence and to escape some of the dynamics that can lead to harm based on group involvement. The other program that I think it's really important to talk about is our Next Step program. Next Step is a hospital-based program that currently exists at HCMC and North Memorial. And this is a bedside intervention for anyone who comes into our hospitals with a serious injury from violence. And that's really important because it speaks to the retaliatory violence that you heard some of our other speakers mention. Retaliatory violence is responsible for a large swath of what we're seeing in our city right now and what we have seen historically. And what we mean by retaliation and retaliatory violence is that violence is circular, and it really does ultimately lead to hurt people. And so when you yourself have been hurt, you're much more likely to want to hurt other people and to retaliate for that harm that's happened to you. And what our bedside intervention does is really work from a place of healing to compel people to think about other options, because that cycle of violence, as it perpetuates, puts our entire community at risk. We know that bullets don't have names on them. We know that violence does not always target the intended target. And even in those cases, we don't want the violence to be perpetuated. So it's very important that we're interrupting the retaliatory nature of violence. And through the bedside intervention, not only are we able to try to de-escalate some of those conflicts and the inclination for retaliatory violence, but we're able to offer resources, much like we do in GVI, to people who have already been injured. Things like housing, things like resources and access to food, jobs and employment, educational opportunities, because we know when basic needs are met by community members, they are far less likely to be impacted by violence and much more amenable to finding a trajectory in life that puts them on a positive and pro-social path. And that's what everyone in Minneapolis and everyone in the world deserves, is the ability to be safe, to have a bright future, and be able to see the end of the light being really positive. And so we're excited about all of those programs. And obviously, we are incredibly excited and proud of the work of the MinneapolUS Strategic Outreach Model. MinneapolUS is the new slogan for the entire Office of Violence Prevention, because all of our programs are going to take all of us, and all of this work is going to take all of us to prevent violence. And so I am grateful for the people that stand here with me, that they have taken the risk to be out on the streets 6 nights a week, engaged in interrupting patterns of violence, using the relationships that they have, the skills that they have, to reach our young people, to reach those who have the potential to be involved in gun violence and who have sometimes already experienced gun violence, and to try and make our communities safer, because it is really the responsibility and the passion of each one of these people to reach our young people, to reach those who are likely to think about gun violence and try to get out in front of it before it happens. They are great ambassadors to this work, and I am pleased to know each and every one of them. At this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Mohammed, I'm going to forget your last name for real. I've known this man a long time. Mohammed Abdul Ahad, to talk a little bit about the Southside implementation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mohammed Abdul Ahad. I am one of the team leads for the Minneapolis Outreach Program. First and foremost, I would like to thank everyone for allowing me to be here today. And I would also like to give a special thanks to the Director of OVP, Ms. Sasha Cotton. The Minneapolis Outreach Program was created to interrupt violence, disrupt patterns of crime before they happen. The name alone speaks volumes as to why we do what we do each night. Breaking the cycle of violence starts with us. We take the time on focusing on building relationships and opposed to simply offering resources. This allows people to feel a part of their community and not just someone that's on the streets. The men and women that walk alongside of me have all been impacted by the uptick in recent violence in our cities. Our life experiences as Black and brown people help us connect with people and resolve conflicts in a way that has not been utilized. Our presence in our community helps us give the people and local business owners a sense of security. The future of community safety starts with us, MinneapolUS. Thank you. Steve. I would like to introduce Steve.
Hi, my name is Steve Floyd. Didn't expect to speak a lot, but at one point I want to make about the MinneapolUS and the program and the men that walk around and women that walk around this city. One of the misconceptions is that we are a group that works with the police. We work in correlation with the community and as a buffer of the police, as a buffer between the police and the community. We are not in any way anybody that snitches, anybody that tries to get people arrested. We're basically using our bodies and our relationships just to intervene in situations that we see happening. One other point I want to make is that too often we get challenged by protesters, especially, which happened the other night, that feel that we are part of the police in anything that we do. We kind of handled that situation. It was kind of tough because we have men a part of this group that are seasoned veterans of the street that have changed their lives and changed the direction of what they want to do. So that makes us even a lot more equipped to get in and to deal with some of the issues that we face in our community. So I just wanted to make that point. We're here for the community. We're here to serve the community. We're here to protect the community. And we're here to be a buffer between the community and the police. Thank you.
Thanks for having us here today. I appreciate everybody acknowledging some of the gifts and talents of these brothers and sisters that we stand alongside. We are the us in MinneapolUS. These brothers are putting their lives on the line every night as we walk these neighborhoods trying to interrupt this violence. I want you to know too, we care about and know and see the gifts and talents in our youth, whether they're A students or whether they're on the street. All we ask is that everybody be a part of the solution. If you're tired of the shootings, be a part of the solution. Don't sit at home and be stagnant. Don't sit at home and be neutral. We ask for everyone's support in the community because we are part of this community. We know that the youth's voice needs to be brought to the table, and not just the tables where it's about data collection, but they need to be brought in about some of the decision making too. I'm honored, I'm humbled, and I appreciate everyone's attention on this right now. And again, I just want to ask that everybody play their role, be a part of the solution. If you're neutral and you do nothing, you're also part of the problem.